Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez. This is Interviews from Quito, the program where we explore some of the biggest challenges facing this country and the region. We've analyzed before the struggle by the LGBTI community in Ecuador to achieve equal marriage, and after years, it is now a reality. In today's program, we look at a constitutional ruling to allow same-sex marriages in Ecuador. But is that enough for achieving equal rights in the country? And what other steps must be taken to protect everyone's rights? To discuss that, we have Christian Paula, president of Pakta Foundation, which represents members of the LGBTI community who've battled so long for this achievement. But first, let's take a look at this video.
The Constitutional Court of Ecuador has legalized same-sex marriage. After 4 hours of debate and with 5 votes in favor and 4 against, the court decided to go through with gay marriage in the country. The Constitutional Court had been asked by a lower court to adopt the language of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which recognizes marriages regardless of sex. Ecuador will now join countries like Mexico, Colombia and Argentina where same-sex marriage is legal. This is an important step towards equality in the country, and hopefully an improvement not only for the LGBTI community, but for other minority groups that have been discriminated throughout history, and for the whole Ecuadorian society.
So thank you, Christian, for being with us. So tell us, how did we get to this situation when we finally have a ruling, a historical ruling, that equal marriage is approved in Ecuador? Because it's not a recent struggle.
Well, it
has been a hard struggle. In fact, it began from 2013 when Pamela Troya and Gabriela Correa began to demand from the government the recognition of the same rights under the legal figure of marriage. Back then, there was not the consultative opinion of the International Court of Human Rights. So what they said then was that Article 67 said that marriage had to be read with the articles of equality. Under this, it was that the right could be demanded. Unfortunately, in the case of Pamela, they had many difficulties legally and politically because the government, through Rafael Correa, said that while he was president, there would not be equalitarian marriage. And that obviously had an echo in the court. And of course they admitted the process, but it was just filed. How things changed? They changed when in January 2018 the Inter-American Court issued an opinion on 3 topics. The first one, equality and non-discrimination, gender equality, and same type of figures for all sexes. That's when the Pakta Foundation set a lawsuit with 8 real-life partners, and we asked them if they would like to help us out in trying to attain the equal rights marriage, since we had the international precedent. And additionally, the Constitutional Court in June 2018 already set the precedent with the Satya court, Satya case. So we had several antecedents that allowed us to have access to the process. What we did not count on is that it was going to reach the Constitutional Court so fast. We thought that we were going to be blocked in all instances because in many cases it was so. However, in 2 of the 8 cases, the judges questioned the interpretation a bit. So they asked the Constitutional Court to interpret the Constitution and the opinion of the International Human Rights Courts. And this is when, in March of 2019, the Constitutional Court calls for the first session, and then in May of the second case, and that's how on June 12th, since then there is a equal rights
to us about
marriage.
Pakta. How do you work with these couples that want to get married in Ecuador? Do you offer any advice? Do you walk through the whole process with them? How does that work?
Well, Pakta is a civil society organization that is in charge of taking out lawsuits when people have been discriminated. In this case, in strategic litigation, there have been cases that we can change the precedent legally. And equal rights marriage was one of those rights that was not written down in our legislation, but that could be interpreted if we understood the thing as the right as a whole. And as I told you before, these 8 couples that were stable partners that had been going on for years, and most of them are our friends, and they decided to support our process, and they were strong enough to have their faces and names in all news media and show society that they're normal people that live as a couple, but that we need equality. Because the topic of equal rights marriage is not that they only give us the right of marriage, but it's that we have a liberty and equality the same as different sex partners have, but that used to be prohibited for same-sex people. And it's more like a symbolic right. So now we're going to have more attention in the exercise of other rights.
Because there's also the issue of, for example, medicine, like legal aspects of a couple. If you're not married to the person that you're living with, or that you're a partner with that person, and something legal happens, something medical happens, you're not allowed to do anything, because you're not, in the eyes of the law, you're not that person's partner or wife or husband, or whichever is the case. But it's also not only legal in medicine, and it's also a social issue to have not more rights than another group, but to be equal.
Exactly. And many people try to say that the civil union that was approved in 2018 gave the same rights as matrimony. But it's really not like that. Let's start with price. The price of getting married in Ecuador is $80, which is $50 for the paperwork and $30 for changing the ID card. Well, the civil union is over $200, so there is a difference there. And it's just a formal difference, but it's still a difference. On the other hand, when same-sex parents have children naturally, like the case of Satya, the girl with 2 mothers, was a clear example that it was possible. When same-sex couples have children, they're not allowed to register their children. So there are children of couples, they're just registered as children of single parents. And medicine topics, it's another. Only father or mother can decide over a child. If the biological father or the biological mother dies, the kid will go to adoption system. In terms of subsidies of Social Security, they have to have, if they're not legally married, they can't receive any pension. So a person who's married has more guarantees when they get divorced. For example, how to divide things. However, the civil unions are not so easy. In fact, a person who is in civil union can get married and easily dissolve the civil union
Entonces, no era tan real
So it wasn't
la
that
igualdad.
real
Y sobre
that
todo
there was
también, como tú
equality.
decías, la libertad.
And in fact,
La
liberty, as you
libertad de
said,
escoger qué
the liberty to
institución jurídica
choose
queremos que se nos
which
proteja.
option, which
Si
legal
es el
option you want to
matrimonio o
go
el
for,
unión de hecho,
if
tenían la
it's
opción los heterosexuales.
marriage or
Los
if it was
LGBT
a civil
solo estábamos
union.
forzados a la unión.
Or
Entonces, no
was
solo es un
was
acto de
forced to go for the civil
desproporción
union.
en las instituciones,
So it wasn't
sino
just
también la
a matter of
discriminación y
not
el
having
poder
all of the
escoger
legal
un
options,
proyecto de vida o una institución legal.
but it's how to
And
carry
I'm
our
very
lives.
interested in knowing how the reaction went. I know it was a very joyous occasion for everyone. It was a very happy moment, but there was also a very negative impact. A lot of people rejected it. How did you see that, those two sides and their reaction to the decision, the historical ruling?
Pues, sabes
Well,
que no
you
nos
know,
sorprendió.
it didn't
No nos
surprise
sorprendió
us,
porque estas reacciones
because these
han
reactions
venido pasando en el Ecuador desde
have happened
1902,
since
cuando el Ecuador
1902,
comenzó a ser un estado
when Ecuador
laico,
began to begin
liberal,
a
donde había la
non-religious
separación
country
Estado-Iglesia.
where there was a
De
division
hecho, cuando se
between
creó
state
el
and
primer
government.
matrimonio
In fact, when the first
civil
civil
sin
marriage
amparo de la Iglesia,
without
el
the
discurso de que se estaba
support
poniendo en
of
peligro la
the
familia comenzó a
church,
surgir.
there
Después
was
con el
an
divorcio,
argument
después
how
con el
family is
voto de la
being
mujer, después con la
threatened,
despenalización
then
de la
with the vote of
homosexualidad.
women,
Los mismos
then
grupos han tenido el
not
mismo
penalizing
discurso reciclado
the gay
que la
activity.
familia va a
So
quebrarse,
it's always the
que la
same
familia
speech
se va a
of that
destruir,
family is going to
pero
be
hasta la
threatened
fecha
or
han
destroyed.
pasado mejores cosas.
But
La
things
familia
have
no se ha
improved,
destruido, tú como mujer
and
estás aquí
things have
hablando
changed,
inglés,
and family is
votando, siendo
still
profesional,
strong.
gracias a las luchas de los grupos
And this is thanks
derechos
to the
humanos.
struggle of
Y
the
estos
human
grupos
rights
siempre han querido
activists.
restringir esos avances.
However, these other groups have always
Sabemos que
tried to
esto ha
restrict
pasado.
the advancement
Hemos
of rights.
superado, hemos
We've been able to
sobrevivido, el
overcome,
país no
to
se ha
survive.
destruido,
The
más
the
bien han
country
habido
has
más
not been
garantías,
destroyed.
más protecciones,
However,
más
there's been more
libertades, más
guarantees,
derechos.
more
Y
liberties.
esto no es una victoria para la población
This is not
LGBTI.
a
Es una
victory
victoria para
for
la
the
sociedad
LGBT
ecuatoriana,
community.
que
This is
podemos
a
decir
victory
que hay
for
un
the
poquito más
entire
de derechos,
Ecuadorian
un poquito más de
community.
igualdad de lo
So
que
we think that there's a
existía
little
hace un
bit
mes.
more
We're
equality.
also joining other countries like Argentina, Mexico, Colombia that already have that in place and that they're leaders in the world respecting LGBTI rights.
Bueno, de hecho somos
Well,
el
in
país
fact,
número 29
we're
del
number-
mundo.
we're
Somos el
number
país número
29
5
country
en Sudamérica,
and 5 in
el
Latin
país
America,
número 6 en Latinoamérica.
6 in Latin
Claro que
America.
es un orgullo,
This, of course,
un
is
orgullo de podernos
it's a-
integrar a
we're
a
joyful
estos otros países que han
that
dado
we
el
can be
paso
part
y
of these
que
other
en
groups.
ninguno de los países ha sido fácil, han tenido
And in
la
none of the
misma
other
crítica,
cases have been easy.
la misma presión mediática,
They've had the
la
same
misma presión
media
por la
pressure,
iglesia,
political
pero
pressure,
han conquistado
but
la
they've able
libertad, han
to
conquistado
conquered
la igualdad, y eso es algo
this
sumamente
equality.
importante.
And this is
Porque
something very
imagínense,
important,
también hay casos
because
de
there are also
ecuatorianos y
cases
ecuatorianas
of
que se
Ecuadorians
casaron
who were
o en
married
España o en Argentina
in
con
Ecuador
sus parejas
or
del mismo
Argentina
sexo,
with their
y se han
same-sex
venido al
couple
Ecuador a pedir
and came
que
here
se
to
les-
Ecuador
que se les
to legalize these
reconozca esos
papers.
matrimonios, como hacen los heterosexuales
Like
cuando se
any
casan en el
heterosexual
exterior,
marriages
pero
do.
tampoco han podido.
But they couldn't do it
Entonces,
either.
su patrimonio, su familia,
So
lo
their
que
family,
construyen también
their
en otros
finance, their
lugares del
economic
mundo no estaba
resources,
siendo reconocido aquí.
nothing
Pero
was
ahora
recognized
las
here in
parejas
Ecuador.
ecuatorianas y
But now
ecuatorianas que
the
se han casado con
Ecuadorians
sus parejas del
who
mismo
got
sexo,
married
dentro de estos 28 países más,
abroad
ya van a tener también
will be
esa
able
protección
to
aquí.
have the same protections here in
And what
Ecuador.
are the main obstacles that the organization and yourself and the community has had to go through to get this ruling when it was approved? It wasn't just the legal aspects, it's also social issues and talking to people, getting them to understand your point of view.
Bueno, todo se enmarcó en una estrategia.
Well,
¿no?
everything
El
was
edificio estratégico se sustenta en
framed
eso.
in a strategic
Plantearse
activity
un camino judicial,
where we
pero que
started
ese
to
camino
put a
judicial
legal
tenga que estar
route,
acompañado
and
por
at the same
cosas
time,
o por
it
acciones
was accompanied by
que se cruzan,
actions,
es decir, acciones en lo político, acciones en lo
political
jurídico,
actions,
acciones en lo académico, en lo
judicial,
social. Es decir,
academic,
hemos
and
tenido que
social
hablar con
aspects.
nuestras compañeras mujeres
We've had to
feministas,
speak with
con
our
compañeros
feminist
indígenas,
counterparts,
con
indigenous
compañeros
counterparts
de otros movimientos sociales,
of
un poco
other
para que
social
entiendan
parties,
por
social
qué estamos
movements,
pidiendo el matrimonio
and
civil
to explain
igualitario.
why we were
Por otro
asking for
lado,
this
también abrir
legal
foros
figure.
de discusión, de debate
There were other
en universidades,
places open, like universities held discussions and roundtables, investigations,
libros, artículos
books,
científicos,
articles,
y también
scientific
siempre
articles,
plantear en
and also
los estratos del Estado o
always trying to
políticos,
influence
esta agenda,
political
¿no? Y de ahí
agendas
mostrar la necesidad de
and show the
generar
need
espacios de
to
igualdad.
create
Como te
spaces
decía,
of
no es
equality.
fácil, es un
As I
camino
told
que
you, it's
se
not easy.
ha venido
It's
recorriendo.
a path
Hemos
that we've
tenido
been
también que
walking
ir a medios de
down through
comunicación,
several
pero
years. We've had to
lamentablemente no
go
nos
to
daban
many
muchos espacios
news
antes
outlets.
de
However, we did not have, the doors were not opened before the ruling. And now the doors are opened
que el Ecuador
to show them, and now we
con la
can
población LGBTI.
show them that
El informe de la Comisión de la
we
Verdad
have
del
same
2010
rights now.
estableció y investigó que la población
In
LGBTI
2010,
estaba
there was an
siendo
investigation that the
socialmente torturada,
LGBT
vejada
community was
antes
being,
de la
did not
despenalización
have the
antes
same
de
rights,
1997.
and they were rejected and denied
Hace
several
2
rights.
años
2
se
years
ganaron
ago,
2 sentencias en la Corte Constitucional.
in the
Uno,
court,
el
in
caso
the,
Bruno Paolo, sobre temas
there
de
were
identidad
2
de género
cases that
trans,
were ruled in
el
favor,
reconocimiento final
and
del cambio de sexo y de nombre en los
they were able
documentos
to
para
recognize
personas trans, y en el 2018
sex
fue la
change.
sentencia del
And
caso Satia,
2018
de la
was the
legalización de la
Satia
doble
case,
maternidad y la doble
by which
paternidad.
a double
Pero
maternity
la
or double
Corte
paternity
le
would be
pidió a la Asamblea, le
would be
exigió a la
recognized.
Asamblea que en un año cambie las leyes
But
para
then
que las personas LGBTI
they
podamos
asked
ejercer sus derechos.
Congress to
Estas
change their
reformas no se han
rules,
hecho hasta la fecha.
but those reforms have
Otro
not been
tema
passed yet.
importante que está en deuda el Estado,
Something
especialmente el gobierno de
else
Lenín Moreno,
important
es la política pública LGTBI.
is the public
gobierno
policy
de
on
Rafael
LGBT
Correa
community,
ya dejó
because
creada
Rafael
la política
Correa
pública. Solo se necesitaba,
created it, but we only
elevarla
needed
a través de decreto ejecutivo. Pero
to
hasta la fecha
legalize
han
it.
pasado
But
2
up until
años
now,
y
2
no hay la
years later,
decisión política. Por
there
eso
is
te
no
decía que
political
esta
decision to
victoria
do
del
so.
matrimonio civil igualitario, más allá, que no es
So,
que toda la población
as I
LGBTI
told
quiere ir
you,
corriendo a casarse. De hecho, no todos quieren casarse
far
porque no
from
creen en el
thinking
matrimonio
that
como
all
una
of the
institución. Más bien
LGBT
creen que el
people
matrimonio
are
es
going
una
to get
institución
married,
que ha
which is not
cortado
happening.
derechos o ha limitado derechos, pero igual hay que tener la opción.
But we
Sin
we have the
embargo,
right to have
lo
the
que
option.
queremos es que la agenda de lo público,
But what we
la
want
agenda de
is
las
the
normas,
public
las políticas
agenda,
públicas,
public
nos regresen a
policy,
ver y
look at us
tengan decisiones políticas
and have decisions,
asertivas. Porque
assertive
los temas de los
decisions.
derechos LGBTI no solo los estamos
Because
vigilando
these
la sociedad
topics
civil,
are
sino
not only
también los
followed by civil
organismos
society,
internacionales de
but
derechos
also
humanos. El
international
Comité de los
organizations of
Derechos del
human
Niño, el Comité
rights.
contra la Tortura, el Comité de Derechos Humanos de Naciones Unidas tienen
They all have
recomendaciones directas al Ecuador
recommendations
que
to
cambie
Ecuador to change legislation, policies, and generate strategies, communication strategies, and educational strategies to improve the conditions of the LGBT community.
La excusa del matrimonio civil igualitario
The
es
excuse
para que nos permita
of
gozar de todos los
having
derechos en igualdad.
same-sex marriage is just an excuse
How
to
can
open
we
more
as a
doors.
community, because it's not just an LGBTI community issue, it's a whole Ecuadorian community issue. How can we as a community demand from our authorities to overcome these issues, to overcome the obstacles, and actually make through on their words, on the, as you said it, the legal aspects and the public laws that need to protect all of our Ecuadorians?
Bueno, creo que es una
I
responsabilidad
think it's a responsibility
de todas las personas que
of everyone
conformamos la
who are
sociedad
part
ecuatoriana, el
of
Estado, la sociedad,
Ecuadorian
las familias,
society.
las personas. Esto es un tema que nos
This
tiene
is a
que
topic
llamar a reflexionar sobre
that
los
calls us to
prejuicios y
reflect
estereotipos que
on the
tenemos sobre las
stereotypes.
diferencias. Porque lo que vivimos las
And
personas
not so
LGBTI,
much on
esos prejuicios de
differences.
que somos anormales, que
Of
somos
course, we've got
enfermos, que somos
prejudice against
criminales,
us, that there were
proviene de
criminals,
una matriz
we're sick people.
colonizadora, de una matriz,
And of course, this comes from
patriarcal,
a
heteronormada,
patriotic,
machista, que los LGBTI lo estamos
machista
cargando ahora, pero que en ciertos
stereotype.
momentos de la historia la han cargado
And-
las mujeres. La han
And
cargado
this is the
los
same
pueblos
type of,
indígenas, la
of
han
burden
cargado
that
los
women
pueblos
have
afro,
used,
pero la
black people
educación,
have
la
had,
sensibilización,
and
el cuestionarnos
through-
por qué pensamos que el
and through a
diferente
broadening
está mal. Es una
awareness
primera reflexión que debemos
is
comenzar
the
a
first
realizarla
reflection that we
de
should
manera
start
individual. Ya de manera
individually.
social,
And
familiar,
then,
también ponemos
as a
pensar de
society,
que
we
puede
have
ser
to
que tengamos
think
hijos o hijas
we may
LGBTI,
have
tíos, sobrinos,
children,
abuelos,
uncle,
padres incluso,
grandparents,
que no
parents
pudieron
that could not
expresar
come out
su
and could not
ser,
express
su
their
verdadera
being,
personalidad por
their
miedo
true
al rechazo,
personality,
por miedo
because
a
of
la
fear
crítica,
of
por miedo a
rejection,
la
of
exclusión.
criticism,
Y esa reflexión
of
también tiene que
isolation.
darse.
And
Y
that is a
esto
reflection
nos
that should
generará
also
mayores
be
espacios
created.
de de socialización y de cuestionarle también al Estado
And we
por
have
qué
to
no hay
question the
políticas
government.
educativas
Why are there no
adecuadas. ¿Por qué no hay
educational
patrones
strategies?
sociales y comunicacionales
Why are there
que
no
rompan
communication
estos prejuicios?
strategies
Y
that
también
break
por qué
these
no hay
stereotypes,
políticas
these
e
prejudices?
intervenciones directas del
Why are
Estado
there
para
no direct
separar los
interventions
discursos de odio y
to
para
separate
separar al
the
Estado
hate
de la Iglesia? Porque
speeches
aquí no solo
and separate
existe la
church
Iglesia
from
cristiana,
society,
la
from
Iglesia
the
evangélica, que
state?
son nuestros enemigos más directos, lamentablemente decir
Here
los
we have-
enemigos, pero son quienes más bloquean nuestros derechos.
We have many
Hay
churches that
otras
block
religiones, hay otras
our
creencias,
actions.
hay otras fe. Dentro del mismo cristianismo incluso.
Within
hemos hablado
Christianity,
con la Iglesia luterana y con
we've
la
spoken
Iglesia
with the
anglicana,
Lutheran
y ellos
and
están
Anglican
muy
churches,
dispuestos,
and
y
they're
de hecho
very
ya lo
open.
hacen, apoyan.
They
La Iglesia
support.
anglicana en Inglaterra casa a parejas del mismo sexo.
In fact, the Anglican
Entonces,
Church
también
in
los
the
medios de
UK
comunicación han
marry
solo
same-sex
enfocado la discusión
couples.
religiosa de un solo lado,
And of course
del lado más extremo.
There's
pero
also
dentro
there's
de
also
las
been only the
religiosidades y
voice
de
of the
las
extreme
espiritualidades que
the
también
extreme
en
of
Ecuador,
the
no se les ha dado
of the
voz
church,
de lo que
but the
piensan.
other voices have
Y
not been
por
heard.
mucho que opinen las religiones,
And-
los credos, es un estado laico.
And
Y un
however,
estado
how much
laico,
the
lo que
church believes,
predomina es
this
la ley
is a
generada por el
non-religious
Estado,
country.
no la ley ni los criterios que provienen de las cabezas de la iglesia.
So
So for our
their
last
opinion should
question,
not be
and I don't
taken
wanna-
into account.
Leave this interview without asking you that. What's next? Now we've won this ruling. Now what's going to happen? What other battles or battlefields you have prepared?
Como te decía,
As
el
I told
matrimonio
you,
igualitario simplemente
same-sex
es una
marriage
lucha por la igualdad,
is
pero
just a
también
struggle
para
from
enfocar
equality
en los
and to
derechos
focus
que
on the
supuestamente
rights
nos están
that
reconociendo antes del
allegedly
matrimonio,
they're
pero que no
recognizing
tenemos un
us.
acceso real
But we need real access
en la educación,
in
en la
education,
salud,
in health,
en temas de vivienda, etc.
in housing topics, in public policy, as I told
en las
you,
reformas legales
in legal reforms
que se requieren
that
para
are required to
garantizar
guarantee
los derechos. Entonces,
our
es
rights.
algo que nos
So
permite
it's something
seguir
that allow
apuntando
us
en lo que ya veníamos trabajando, pero que no teníamos
to continue our
oídos
struggle.
suficientes, que no nos regresaban a ver. Y lo que seguirá en adelante es que esta lucha
And what
es
comes forward
interseccional.
is
El
that this
matrimonio civil igualitario
this is just the
nos
beginning.
permite que
The same-sex
la
marriage
gente que
allows
lucha
us,
por el aborto por violación,
for example,
por la lucha
to
antiminera,
support those people
por
who
mejores condiciones
who are
salariales,
against,
por
who-
los migrantes,
who are
la dignidad de los
pro-abortion,
migrantes,
the
por
people against minoring,
la discriminación
the
que
discrimination
vive el
against
pueblo afro
migrants,
y el pueblo
against
indígena, por la
black
consulta
people,
previa.
indigenous
Es un
people.
tema para decirles a los otros grupos
It's a
sociales,
topic
si es que
to
nos
tell the
unimos y
rest
que
of the social
luchamos,
society
podemos
that if we
cambiar
get
la
together, we
sociedad,
can change
podemos
it.
generar
We can
menos
generate
espacios de violencia, de
less
discriminación y
spaces of
prejuicio. Yo creo que
discrimination
con eso
and
me quedo,
violence.
que esto
I think
no es el
that's my last
LGBTI.
message.
Esto es un impulso
This is
para
not
todas
the
las
end,
luchas
this is
sociales
just a
que
start,
tenemos
this is a
ahora.
beginning.
Indeed, and a very powerful message.
Claro que sí.
Thank you very much,
Of
Christian, for your
course.
time.
Gracias.
Thank you.
So we've been talking to Christian Paula, president of Pakta Foundation, on the ruling allowing same-sex marriage in Ecuador and how the struggle still continues for the LGBTI community and for the Ecuadorian society as a whole. Thank you for watching. This is Interviews from Quito. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.